I continue. I'll get it, she cried, jumping up. Sit down, he said. When he came back, she noticed that the new drink was dark amber with a quantity of whiskey in it. Darling, shall I get your slippers? No. Again, she does her routine works, daily works. She brings his slippers always. No. She watched him as he began to sip the dark yellow drink, and she could see little oily swirls in the liquid because it was so strong. I think it's a shame, she said, that when a policeman gets to be as senior as you, they keep him walking about on his feet all day long. So pay attention that she hints his work, job. He didn't answer, so she bent her head again and went on with her sewing. But each time he lifted the drink to his lips, she heard the ice cubes clinking against the side of the glass. Darling, she said, would you like me to get you some cheese? I haven't made any supper because it's Thursday. No, he said. If you are too tired to eat out, she went on, it's still not too late. There's plenty of meat and stuff in the freezer, and you can have it right here and not even move out of the chair. Her eyes waited on him for an answer, a smile, a little note, but he made no sign. Anyway, she went on, I'll get you some cheese and crackers first. I don't want it, he said. She moved uneasily in her chair, the large eyes still watching his face. But you must have supper. I can easily do it here. I'd like to do it. We can have lamb chops or pork, anything you want. Everything's in the freezer. Forget it, he said. Burada dikkat ederseniz artık kayıtsızlık var. Yani önemsememe var. But darling, you must eat. I'll fix it anyway, and then you can have it or not, as you like. She stood up and placed her sewing on the table by the lamp. Sit down, he said, just for a minute. Sit down. It wasn't till then that she began to get frightened. Go on, he said. Sit down. She lowered herself back slowly into the chair, watching him all the time with those large, bewildered eyes. He had finished the second drink and was staring down into the glass, frowning. Listen, he said, I've got something to tell you. Just pay attention now. What is it, darling? What's the matter? He had become absolutely motionless, and he kept his head down so that the light from the lamp beside him fell across the upper part of his face, leaving the chin, mouth in shadow. She noticed there was a little muscle moving near the corner of his left eye. So pay attention what will happen now. This is going to be a bit of a shock to you, I am afraid, he said. But I've thought about it a good deal, and I've decided the only thing to do is tell you right away. I hope you won't blame me too much. And he told her. It didn't take long, 4 or 5 minutes at most, and she sat very still through it all, watching him with a kind of dazed horror as he went further and further away from her with each word. So there it is, he added, and I know it's a kind of bad time to be telling you, but there simply wasn't any other way. Of course, I'll give you money and see you are looked after, but there needn't really be any fuss. No fighting, for example. I hope not anyway. It wouldn't be very good for my job. Her first instinct was not to believe any of it, to reject it all. It occurred to her that perhaps he hadn't even spoken, that she herself had imagined the whole thing. Maybe if she went about her business and acted as though she hadn't been listening, then later, when she sort of woke up again, she might find none of it had ever happened. So, in these sentences, she doesn't want to believe what she heard, what her husband told her. She just thinks that it was just a dream like that. I'll get the supper, she managed to whisper, and this time he didn't stop her. When she walked across the room, she couldn't feel her feet touching the floor. She couldn't feel anything at all. She doesn't believe what her husband told her, except a slight nausea and a desire to vomit. Everything was automatic now. Down the stairs to the cellar, the light switch, the deep freeze, the hand inside the cabinet taking hold of it, the first object it met. She lifted it out and looked at it. It was wrapped in paper, so she took off the paper and looked at it again. A Lego lamp. All right then, they would have lamp for supper. She carried it upstairs, holding the thin bone end of it with both her hands. And as she went through the living room, she saw him standing over by the window with his back to her, and she stopped. For God's sake, he said, hearing her, but not turning around. Don't make supper for me. I am going out. At that point, Mary Melanie simply walked up behind him and without any pause, she swung the big frozen Lego lamp high in the air and brought it down as hard as she could on the back of his head. So she hit her husband's back. She might just as well have hit him with a steel club. So you are responsible for looking at the glossaries as well. She stepped back a pace, waiting, and the funny thing was that he remained standing there for at least 4 or 5 seconds, gently swaying. Then he crashed to the carpet. The violence of the crash, the noise, the small table overturning helped bring her out of the shock. So she is now aware of what she did. She came out slowly, feeling cold and surprised, and she stood for a while blinking at the body, still holding the ridiculous piece of meat tight with both hands. All right, she told herself, so I've killed him. It was extraordinary now how clear her mind became all of a sudden. She began thinking very fast, as the wife of a detective. So we can understand his job. He is a detective. She knew quite well what the penalty would be, what the punishment would be for her, because she thinks that she had killed her husband. That was fine. It made no difference to her. In fact, it would be a relief. On the other hand, what about the child? They had a very small child. What were the laws about murderers with unborn children? Did they kill them both, mother and child? Or did they wait until the 10th month? What did they do? Mary Melanie didn't know, and she certainly wasn't prepared to take a chance. She carried the meat into the kitchen, placed it in a pan, turned the oven on high, and shoved it inside. Then she washed her hands and ran upstairs to the bedroom. She sat down before the mirror, tidied her face, touched up her lips and face. So she does something that nothing happened before. She wants to clear away everything. She tried a smile. It came out rather peculiar. She tried again. "Hello, Sam," she said brightly aloud. The voice sounded peculiar too. "I want some potatoes, please, Sam. Yes, and I think a can of peas." That was better. Both the smile and the voice were coming out better now. She rehearsed it several times more. Kendine gelmeye çalışıyor defalarca. Ses tonunu eski haline döndürmeye çalışıyor defalarca, dikkat ederseniz. Then she ran downstairs, took her coat, went out the back door, down the garden into the street. It wasn't 6 o'clock yet, and the lights were still on in the grocery shop. "Hello, Sam," she said brightly, smiling at the man behind the counter. "Why, good evening, Mrs. Maloney. How are you?" "I want some potatoes, please, Sam. Yes, and I think a can of peas." The man turned and reached up behind him on the shelf for the peas. Patrick decided he's tried and doesn't want to eat out tonight, she told him. So, for the first time, we come across the name of her husband as well. Patrick. Patrick's decided he is tired and doesn't want to eat out tonight, she told him. So from this sentence we can easily understand that they mostly go out, they dine out. We usually go out Thursdays, and now he's caught me without any vegetables in the house. Then how about meat, Mrs. Maloney? No, I've got meat, thanks. I've got a nice leg of lamb from the freezer. Oh, I don't much like cooking it frozen, Sam, but I'm taking a chance on it this time. You think it will be all right? Personally, the grocer said, I don't believe it makes any difference. You want these Idaho potatoes? Oh, yes, that will be fine. 2 of those. Anything else? The grocer cocked his head on one side, looking at her pleasantly. How about afterwards? What are you going to give him for afterwards? Well, what will you suggest, Sam? The man glanced around his shop. How about a nice big slice of cheesecake? I know he likes that. So again, we find out that her husband loves to eat cheesecake. That's what she offered her.